If you're a shepherd leader, what do you do when the sheep under your care go, Grrrr?
Welcome to the podcast with your host, Craig T. Owens. Craig's new book, When Sheep Bite, is available now at craigtowens.com.
I don't think any shepherd leader, any pastor has ever not experienced sheep murmuring, grumbling, complaining of something. The food, the pasture, the pastor, anything that they can complain about, they probably will complain about. It's nothing new. It's been going on since the very beginning of time. In fact, when I was first writing my book, When Sheep Bite, and I sent just the title of it to my graphic designer, he came up with a pretty scary picture right at the beginning of the sheep baring its teeth and ready to attack. So what do we do when the sheep behave that way? Well, I'd like to back up a little bit and ask you to ask yourself a question. Do you know that God has called you to the position that you're in? We need to be very certain of that, because if I can state with assurance that God chose me, then that means that He knows everything about the pasture that I'm in, including all of the sheep that are there. It means that He has equipped me to deal with all of those sheep. He knew those sheep that would be there, even the ones that maybe our personalities clash a little bit. They're a little bit more difficult, or maybe a little bit more prickly to be around. But if I know that God has chosen me to be there, then that gives me a humble confidence, or if you will, a confident humility. Not that we lord it over those sheep. In fact, it's the exact opposite of that. Jesus said that there is a lot of earthly leaders that like to use their title and their position to lord it over people. But Jesus said it's not supposed to be that way with us. We are there to serve them. And one of the ways that we serve them is the way that we handle their murmurings. We need to handle it the right way. Now, here's the first thing that I would suggest when you find your sheep murmuring at you or attacking you or biting you. The first question I would ask is, have I done something wrong? We need to be willing to pray that prayer that David prayed at the conclusion of Psalm 139, where he said, "Search me, O God, know my heart, see if there is any offensive way in me." It could be that maybe I ignored a sheep. Maybe I inadvertently stepped on their hoof. I jostled them. I moved them in some way that they weren't expecting. And that's why they're murmuring at me. That's why they're growling at me. In that prayer time, in that introspection time, the Holy Spirit can point that out to me. And if I've made something, done something wrong, I need to quickly make that right. I tell you, your leadership will go so far when you go to somebody and say, "I was wrong. I'm sorry. I messed up there. I dropped the ball. Here's what I'd like to do to make it right." You'll be able to restore that sheep back to a good place in the pasture. But if you've done that and the sheep are continuing to murmur, you say, "I've prayed the prayer and I don't believe the Holy Spirit has shown me anything where I need to take care of this," then I would take us to the counsel of Moses in Exodus chapter 16. Listen to these verses. "And Moses said, 'Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord.' And Moses said to Aaron, 'Say to all the congregation of Israel, come near before the Lord, for He has heard your murmurings.'" Okay, so if you've done step one and you say, "I have checked and I didn't do anything wrong," or "I did do something wrong and I have gone to make things right," and that sheep is still murmuring, then you need to do what Moses tells us to do here. The first thing is a reminder for you that God has heard their murmurings. If you have taken care of what you need to take care of and they're still murmuring, they're still grumbling and growling, then you need to remind yourself, God has heard this. But the second thing you need to do is lovingly remind those sheep that you are not grumbling against me, but you're grumbling against God, and He has heard your grumbling. Friends, that is a loving thing to be able to speak the truth to those sheep, to let them know that their grumbling is not just against a flesh and blood person, but they are grumbling against the chief shepherd who has placed you there as the under shepherd over this flock. Let's not get frustrated. Let's not get antagonistic against those sheep that are grumbling against us. Because again, you remember what happened to Moses? He finally had it up to here with the grumbling sheep, and he reacted in a moment of anger, and it disqualified him from being able to go into the promised land. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want it to happen to me either. Let's not get frustrated. Let's check ourselves first. And then if we have done everything that we can do, then let's remind the sheep that their murmuring is against God, and then let's leave it in God's hands. I wrote a book called When Sheep Bite, and several of the bites that I talk about, things like gossip and criticism and even flattery, those are murmurings that the sheep will frequently have against us. And in my book, I help you to be able to respond to those in a biblical, loving way. I hope that you'll pick up a copy of that book, that you'll handle the murmurings of the sheep in the best way possible.
Craig's new book, When Sheep Bite, is available now. To order, go to craigtowens.com.